and we've talked about adopting. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mills, and this is
Chris,
my fiance. We, mostly me, make videos about expat life in the Dominican Republic and other stuff. Chris is Dominican, he lives here, he's from here. I'm American and I've lived here for the past almost 2 years. If you like this video or any of my other videos, I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit subscribe, comment, like, whatever suits you best would be great with me. If you hear the cars were outside, I'm sorry. I'm gonna do my best to cut them out, but I know some will get in, even though it's Sunday, usually it's quieter. Before I start, I just want to say a video I'm doing next week on Wednesday at my next class with my Spanish tutor. We are going to do kind of like a little interview with Dominicans on the street. So if you have any questions at all that you would like me to ask kind of like a local Dominican on the street, anything really, they're pretty open and friendly. So anything that you've been wondering about, feel free to comment below. I'll write it down and I'll make sure to ask them that as long as it's appropriate, hopefully.
so today we're going to talk about how can you adopt a kid from the Dominican Republic. It's kind of hard.
Yeah, sneak peek. I've said it in a couple other videos. I'm adopted, so it's something that I'm very interested in. And I used to never want to adopt my own child, because I know like everything that goes into it and the emotions and everything. It can be a mess. But now, I don't know, now that I'm older and we're about to be married, talk about kids and whatnot, we're open to adopting, and I would love to adopt a child from the Dominican Republic, but I know a lot of families here who have tried to do it, been in the process, families from the States. So I just wanted to share a little bit with you on how the process goes and how you would be able to adopt a child from the Dominican Republic.
For those who don't know, the DR is part of the Hague Treaty, the International Hague Treaty, and all the adoptions are overseen by an entity called CONANI, which is like local. Yeah,
CONANI stands for the National Council for Children and Adolescents, and every single adoption goes through CONANI. They handle the Dominican local court processes and are kind of like the in-between between the courts and the international adoption agencies that oversee these adoptions.
So in the 1980s, it was not like this. There's a number, over 200 kids were separated from their families back then. That took place in Alto Mayor del Rey, that's over the East Coast.
Yeah, it's more like southeast. So I'll tell you a little bit about why now international adoptions and national adoptions are so closely monitored. There was kind of like an adoption machine running in this area, in this city of the Dominican Republic, that was administered by a missionary from Quebec, and he would work with Canadian adoption agencies and come here to recruit Dominican children. So there's only like 40,000 people in this region, and there were over 200 adoptions, international adoptions of children there, which is a big number, especially since these children weren't orphans. Their parents are and were really, really poor. As you can imagine, it's an area with extreme poverty. Guys, it is me. I'm editing this video right now. And of course, as I'm editing, I realize that a big chunk of this story cut out. Not a big fan of my camera. I definitely don't want to leave this part out because that would be like a cliffhanger. As I was saying, a lot of these families were really poor and uneducated. So the main missionary that was in charge of these adoption agencies was called Jean Lassalle. I don't know how to say that in French. It's Lacaille. So he was in charge. He would be the one coming to the Dominican Republic, and he would talk to families. He said he would specifically look for families that had either a lot of children or a sick child, and he would tell them that in Canada they would be able to receive medical care at a much higher level than they would in the Dominican Republic, and he would tell the poorer ones that they would be able to send their children to a school in Canada, to college. They would make a lot of money, and then they would come back and take care of their parents and the rest of their family. So it seemed to these families like a good opportunity that they were giving their kids a better life and themselves, because it would kind of like pay off. And if you know this culture, you know that a lot of people help take care of their families. So that's not what happened, especially the ones with younger kids that were just sick. They thought that they were coming back in a year or two after they got healthy and the treatment they needed, and they didn't, because they were matched with a family who wanted a child to adopt. So you can imagine that there was a lot of heartbreak there, and a lot of the Canadian families did not know that these children were not actually orphans. John said that he never exchanged money to the families for their children, but I do know that in most adoption agencies, families do need to pay, so I'm not really sure. There are a ton of children here that you'll find working on the streets, which is something you don't see in the United States or Canada. Generally, it's not allowed. So here we'll see a lot of little children, mostly boys, selling flowers, trying to wash your shoes or your windows for even 1 peso. It's really, really sad. And that is because there are close to 600,000 children under the age of 15 that have no parental care. And that just means their parents are not around. They're alive. They're not actively parenting. They're not watching the children, making sure they're clothed and fed. Some of them are like making them go work or whatnot, or the children have to for their own survival. And 20% of that number are actually orphans. All adoptions now, international and domestic, need to have completely severed family ties. To put it into perspective, in 2013, only 17 international adoptions occurred here, which is extremely low.
At least one of the parents who's gonna adopt the kid has to be a citizen from the country they're gonna bring the child to. They both have to be at least 30 years old and have been married for at least 5 years with no prior divorces.
Mm-hmm. And you can't be older than 60. You have to be older than 15 years than the child you're adopting. You can't have any domestic violence violation, sexual violation, criminal record in the past 10 years. And you need to be a heterosexual couple, so a male and a female. Unfortunately, the GR doesn't allow same-sex married couples to adopt. Both parents also need to have at least a high school diploma or the equivalent, like a GED. There's no minimum income requirement, but you do need to meet the requirement based on USCIS to immigrate the child to the US. So I believe you need to be at least above the US poverty line.
He was like,
I thought I saw him.
if you're gonna adopt a kid, there's a limitations based on how many kids you have like already living with you.
Yeah. You can't have like too many kids in the home already. And you need to show your medical records and any medications you're currently taking.
The whole process takes about 18 to 46 months.
So it's a really long process, and if you're adopting an infant or a young child, it can be even longer. If you're familiar with the DR and how things work here, it's always like one more paper is needed in the court.
And once you're matched with a child here, both parents have to come here and live here for at least 60 days.
Yeah, you live with the child. It's like a time for you guys to live together. A social worker comes and sees if everything's going well. If the child's over 12, you can sometimes make it just 1 month, but that completely is like on a case-by-case basis.
Then after they live here for 60 days, one of the parents can go and the other parent has to stay for at least 2 months until the process is done.
Yeah, they can take the child back with them at that point.
If you come here and visit an orphanage, you're gonna see a lot of kids there, but that doesn't mean that all of them are orphans. A lot of them are like the parents drop them by, and then they come like see them like every once in a while.
If they can't like provide for them, they know at least they'll get fed at the orphanage, so they'll put them there in the home. visit, but they're definitely not up for adoption. Because of everything that was happening in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s with adoptions here, that's why adoptions are so strict now, which is a good thing, but also hard for the parents that definitely want a child and deserve a child and have all of the requirements. Haiti has completely shut down international adoptions because the children were being like victims of human trafficking after the adoptions were completed, which is so sad. So I'm glad that, you know, people are at least monitoring. Not go to a pregnant woman here and pay her for her child or convince her that, you know, I'll buy you, I don't know, I'll get you an apartment or food or clothes or whatever you need, and then I'll take care of the baby. That's definitely, if Konani hears about that, the adoption's over, shut down.
As you can see, it is a long process. It is not guaranteed. If one of the family members want the kid, you will not get it, unfortunately.
Yeah, they can. I've had friends here who have tried to adopt. They've had a child placed with them, and then a cousin, blood relative came up and said, no, I'll take the child, so it ended immediately. I've had other friends who have tried to adopt their stepkids, like they're married to a Dominican and he or she has children. They've tried to adopt and make it legal for years and it still hasn't gone through. So like I said, there's always another paper you need, and if like domestic adoptions are so hard, even if you're permanent and living here forever, then you can imagine international adoptions are that much harder. I know if you go through an agency, a private agency in the United States, it can be like $30,000 for the whole adoption, which is a lot of money also. Do you want to adopt a kid?
Yeah.
From here.
From everywhere.
There's a lot of, I don't know, I think about it a lot because I'm adopted and I was born in the United States and stayed in the United States. But I know there's a lot of things that you need to make sure happen when you adopt a child internationally. I think if we were to adopt a Dominican, it would be good and fine because he's Dominican and I've lived here for a couple years. So I really think it's important to keep that culture from where they're from when you adopt. That's why ideally I would love to adopt a child here, but the process makes it so difficult that I don't know if it's a reality for us. But luckily the United States has a really good foster care system. No, they don't. The United States has a foster care system in place where you can foster to adopt and things for much cheaper, much quicker. So you might look at that. Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching this video. See you in the next one. Peace.
Great. If you have any questions at all, comments, your experiences, I would love to hear them. Comment below any ideas for future videos that you want to see with me or with Chris. He loves them, so let us know. We'll be happy to do something. Hit subscribe. See you guys soon. Bye.